Let me explain to you what journalism is all about. Journalism is about a man named Bill Werner. Now, there's more like him, but the truth of the matter is, Bill works for the Minnesota News Network. So when you hear what he reports, you first off, you know you're getting the facts. Second off, you know you're not getting them with a bias. That he's just giving you examples of what is happening. He's been on this show before. He's going to be on this show again. I'd like to get him on some stories that make you feel good. But the fact of the matter is, not a lot of that's happening in the Twin Cities area right now, so let's bring him in. Bill, I'd like to say good to have you back on down the road, but it's got me ripping my hair out like I know you must be as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that we were talking, Joel, on better circumstances, because we just talked Friday, right? Was it just Friday? I guess it was,
Yeah.
right? About a young woman run over by one of the vehicles involved in a rolling gun battle through downtown Minneapolis, and the tragedy of that. And now, Saturday night / Sunday morning, a woman killed, 14 others injured at a bar in St. Paul, a mass shooting. And here we have it's played out in a different way, but it's the same kind of tragedy. It's a gun-related violence tragedy.
Well, and that seems to be and have drawn the attention of the nation. That when people are looking at Minneapolis, St. Paul now, they're looking at areas like they used to talk about when it comes to Chicago and sites
Detroit,
like that.
Detroit in the 1970s,
Yeah.
or the Bronx when wild dogs were roaming part of the Bronx. Now it's not to that degree, but that kind of violence has touched us here in the Midwest, and it affects more than just the people in Minneapolis, Joel. Every time you talk about you like to come to downtown Minneapolis, a lot of people we like having people here. I think we try to do a good job of rolling out the red carpet for people and making them feel comfortable, maybe differently than other really large cities would, like a Chicago or a New York, right? And this is your big city that's in close. Mm-hmm. And now this is happening. What can we say to the people in North Dakota, Greater Minnesota, even Montana, South Dakota, right? I mean, what can we say?
Well, this is just hours after our conversation on Friday. We already, as you mentioned, we're talking about the violence of what happened in a vehicle-to-vehicle shootout where somebody on a scooter ends up paying the ultimate price for that. My producer of my radio show is a 24-year-old young woman that just graduated college. And she's just getting started in life. Her roommate, which I don't know her age, but I'm assuming is very similar. I've met her. Those two get in a vehicle and they drive to the musical Frozen, which is playing in downtown Minneapolis right now. They parked in a parking ramp and they went somewhere for, I don't know if it was a drink or supper or whatever. And the individual that was serving them asked them where they parked. And she told them, and she said, well, you get out there right now while it's light out, and you move that vehicle, and you move it to a different parking ramp. They did it upon advice from her, and I think it was good advice. But I looked at her this morning when she was telling me that story, and I went, this is a downtown area that I was so proud to show everybody, show my kids and go to and feel completely comfortable at night around. And here, when she told me that story, my producer, that changed her image of what it's like for a long, long time, Bill.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people's experience. And it is not the kind of thing that the downtown council wants to have people, the Chamber of Commerce in downtown Minneapolis wants to have people associate with downtown Minneapolis. I'm the same way, Joel. I grew up here and I saw downtown go through bad times and good times. And it looked like it was starting to really get going and momentum, right? In the 90s and into the 2000s and even through the 2010s, really up to a real roaring point of a lot of people down here and a lot of restaurant activity and sports activity. Our offices used to be over there in Butler Square, right across the street from Target Field. And, I'd come out of there at the end of a work day, 7 o'clock p.m. or so, and I thought I was in New York in terms of the level of activity there, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it was jam packed. Now, it wasn't for a large area of many, many miles like Manhattan is, as an example, but for that one section, I thought, oh, wow, this is a lot like New York. And then, as we have talked about before, the pandemic came along, and then George Floyd, and everything has changed. Now, there's still a fair amount of activity down here, as you know. Your producer went down there, and there's stuff going on. But there's that edge of where is safe and where is not. And like you asked me last Friday, would I take? I don't have grandchildren, but if I had grandchildren, would I take them there after dark? And no, I wouldn't. Not now. And I
Well,
don't know if I'd take them into St. Paul either. You know what I mean? And I don't think you can certainly take them anywhere. See, that's the problem.
well, and that's my next question because, Senator Klobuchar took to one of her ways to communicate with all of us. She took to Twitter, and you could see the frustration in her fingers as she typed her response. And she's had it. Others have had it. They're expecting leadership when it comes to it. They don't want their state defined by something like this. Bill, you have a good handle on what separates St. Paul from Minneapolis and how they're dealing with this. Can you give folks a breakdown on that?
Yeah, and St. Paul is confronted with a different situation than Minneapolis was, and St. Paul, the mayor is saying, "Hey, we're going to do increased police patrols in this area. We're not going to tolerate it," and so on and so forth. Understandable response. In Minneapolis, it's a bit more complex because on the Minneapolis side of the river, the criminal, at least as judged by a jury, the criminal was a police officer. Okay. In other words, I'm talking about Derek Chauvin, who, at least according to the jury's verdict, murdered George Floyd. So therefore, you have a totally different dynamic. You have people who say, who are in that community affected directly by George Floyd's murder, who say, we can't trust some of these officers. You saw many people have seen the recent video of the man who was beaten by officers, a couple in the riots, the George Floyd riots, who shot at police, thinking after he was hit with a rubber bullet, thinking that it was other criminals. Turned out to be police, and he surrenders, and then one of the officers beats him. So, there's that kind of attitude. And then on the other side of it, you have other citizens who say, well, look, I can't even go to downtown Minneapolis. I don't know where this is going to happen. If it even happens in West 7th and St. Paul, am I safe anywhere? We need to have more police on the streets. Those are the two things that are at play. And the test point is going to be this referendum that's coming up not all far from now in the city of Minneapolis on this initiative that would change the city charter.
Well, and you bring that up, and I don't want to lose the opportunity in the little bit of time we have left to ask you about that, because the voters are going to decide whether or not to get rid of the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with a Department of Public Safety, which I don't know if that's about tones, if that's about what, but I do know this, that if I was a young man or woman fresh out of the police academy and I was looking where to do my work, if that was what the people in Minneapolis sent as a message, I'm not sure I'd take a job with the city of Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, that they're having difficulty getting officers just because of the reputation of the department. There are some who believe that the leadership in the city, you can say yes or no and agree with that, but I think it's fairly clear that there are some police officers, either existing officers or candidates, who are looking and say who their conclusion is that the city leadership is not really backing the police, and that the citizens are not really backing the police either. Now, you can agree or disagree with that, but I don't think anybody would argue that is an attitude out there on the part of some people.
Bill, I hope I don't have to call you again very soon and have more conversation about this. And it seems to me that the players are going to step in. It does. It seems to me that the Klobuchars, who have the power all over the state of Minnesota, are about to deal themselves a hand, and we'll see where that goes. So
We will indeed.
yeah, Bill, always good to talk to you, sir. Thanks for coming on.